So you're welcome once again. This is part 5 of the stock manager demo. So we're going to put some codes of displaying in the table the data that we have saved from the database. So the first thing we need to do is get the connection. So as usual, we get connection from the database connector class. So I repeat it again, we have this public void get connection method and this get this connection method. So what these methods do is they give us connection or the right to be able to do something on a database, and after doing what we have to do, we get disconnected from the database. So what we need to do is to use these methods. We need to use these two methods in our project here in this display in table method. But then we're not able to use these get this connection, like for example get connection. We can't use this get connection method because we are not extended to this class, or we are not connected to this class, so there is no way you can get this connection. So what we need to do is we're going to call that class, this database connector class, so that we can use everything we have into this class, everything we have inside this class. Whenever we get this class, whenever we have this class, we can pretty much be able to use or do whatever we want from it. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare it and then instantiate it. I'm going to call it connector and then new database connector. So we have instantiated this class database connector. So this means that we now are able to do whatever we want with that class. So what we want from that class is to get connected. So now if I click control space, I'm able to get the connection method easily. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a query, an SQL query that will select data from the database. So I will write string select data query, and then I write the query. So I will write select all from stock, and this is our query. And then the next thing is I'm going to use the statement. I'm going to create a statement, and also the statement variable is already created here in this class database connector. We have the statement, so we don't need to create it again. All we need is to use this object that we have instantiated here to be able to do pretty much everything we want from that class. So what we need is a statement. So then we say we create statement using the connection dot create statement. And now the next thing is going to be executing this query that we have. We're going to execute this query. So how to execute the query? We are also going to use the connector and say that the result set is going to get data from the database after we have executed the query. So then we add a try and catch statement, and then now what we are going to do is create a model. a model is pretty much like a class that helps us to be able to make modification and do pretty much what we want on the table, or to be able to use the table. So how do we do it? We say default table model, we call it a name, and then we write it again, and then we put the name of the table we want to be able to edit, and the variable name of this table is data table. Put the name and then say get model. Now we are done. So the next thing we are going to do, because we are going to start to modify data from the table, we're going to say set row count. We're going to first count the number of rows we have, but because we're going to start to put data inside the table, we want to start from the first row. So the next thing is, since now we have got the data we want to save, we're going to make a loop. This loop will help us to be able to save the data in the first row, in the second row, in the third row, and so on, and also pass through all the cells of the table. So we're going to say connector.resultSet, then .next. And what this pretty much means is we're trying to put data in the table, and the data that we're going to put in the table will come from this result set. So what is a result set normally? A result set is like a variable that contains everything that have been returned when we used an execute query, when we have executed a query. And those queries are like a select query. So when we use a select query, we have to get something returned, and what we are returned is stored into this result set variable. So what we're going to do is, since we have data returned when you use this select query, we're going to display that data into the table. So there are many ways to do that, and for me the easiest way and much more clearer way is to use this way. I'm going to take that data and display it into, or put that into some variables, and I'm going to create a variable. I call it type, and that variable I'm going to give it the data that I got from the result set, and that data is that which I'm going to put in the table. So this I'm going to do these to be able to do, or to be able to use this data in whatever you want to do. For instance, you might want to display this data into the command line using systemout.println. So if you want to use it, you would use these variables created here. And if I want to display the data from the table, I also need to use these variables from here. The next thing is quantity, I hope, and then quality, and then price, and then finally the date. So what we did is we used the result set to get the data on the first row, and on the second row, and the third, until the sixth row. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the model to add a row on the table. So we're going to create an object, And in that object, we are going to list all these variables we have created here. These variables are holding data that we have retrieved from the database. So I'm going to write type and then name and then quantity and then quality and then price and then date. Yep, that's it. So this is what we need to do when we want to save data from the database. This is all. And as usual, for everything we do, we need to finally get disconnected to allow space to other transactions to be saved. So I'm going to say connector dot get disconnection. So I need to first clarify some few things. The reason why I use this connector is because we want to use methods and variables which are inside another class or which are from another class. We want to get connected using this method from this class. We want to use this connection, prepare statement, and result set from this database connector class. And we don't want to do this again, to repeat these steps into this other class. So what we did is we created an object of that class here. After creating an object of that class, we're going to be calling whatever we want from that class using that object. So this is pretty much it. So this is the way we're going to select data from the database and display it in the table. So what we're going to do next is to first try the project. We're going to run it and see if it is actually working. And if it is working, it will be a really great improvement and step forward. So let us run and see. So here it is. What I did is I first checked before running the project. I tried with some codes and I entered some data, and here it is what we got. Because we have said that whenever we save something in a database, we want that we're going to be displaying what we have saved directly in the table using this method. And we have also said that for every time we run this project, we're going to display data that we have in the database using this display in table method. So this is what it did. So as I ran the project, it immediately gave me what I had in the database. So now I can add something else. So for example, I can choose beverages and say Fanta 1, and I'm adding 1 because I want this name to be unique. I don't want to repeat this name, because if I repeat it, there will be an error, because we have made this name as our primary key in the database. It needs to be unique. So the next thing is I'm going to say, like, okay, choose the quality, the price. I don't remember the price of soda, so let me put this, and then choose the date on which it was done, and then we save. As we save, we're going to be given a message that tells us that data was saved. Okay, and then what you have saved is put in the database. Here it is. So this is pretty much it. This is what we need to do to be able to save data in the database. The next thing we're going to do is to see how we can be able to update data from the database, and also how can we select this data from the database. But before doing that, we're going to make sure that whenever we save this data from these input fields are going to be removed, so that we can click and then other data is put inside.